Welcome to George Mason University's Studio A. My name is Rick Davis, and today our guest is Peggy Pridemore, a location manager for a number of films shot in the D.C. area, including The Wedding Crashers, Forrest Gump, Deep Impact, and many, many more. Please welcome Peggy Pridemore.
Thank you. Hi.
Peggy, welcome to Studio A. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now, I think we have to start with a very basic question because I think your profession is not familiar to a lot of people. What does a location manager actually do?
Well, I help the director and the designer figure out what spots to film in, and then I'm the liaison between those locations and the film company. I get the permits and do all the details, take care of all the details that make the location possible to film in. Like, we just worked at the Air and Space Museum, and I had to go through all the logistics of the security and which doors needed to be left open and how to handle the crowds that were there during the day and how to move an actor in and out of the building without him being swamped, and all the myriad of details that the location.
That's a very complicated location. Were you shooting actually while crowds were touring the museum?
We did. We certainly did. So we actually, to make it work, we had to cordon off that end of the museum to keep the crowds out.
I can only imagine. Well, so I guess that the next question has to be, what led you to choose this, what would seem to be an extremely challenging but exciting profession?
Thank you. It is very challenging, and that's part of why I love the job. Is every day is a challenge. Can you get the location to allow you to film, and then can you make sure the location works perfectly so that the film company just comes in and it's like a set for them to move into and film at. And that's one of the reasons when I was looking at behind the scenes work to do on features, I've chose locations because it is very challenging. But the other reason is because I get to meet all kinds of different people, and I love meeting people. So it was a great way to meet all kinds of people and still work in the film business too. I get to liaison between the two, so I get to meet interesting film type people and interesting building type people and location type people, and it's great amalgamation of the two.
In the theater, we have that old expression on both sides of the footlights, and I guess your profession is one of the ones that really translates to
that's exactly
both sides of the
right.
lens, I guess. Yeah,
that's
fantastic.
right.
Now, when you are approached to do a film, and you have to start scouting locations and making all these arrangements, where do you get your information? Is it from the screenplay or from the director or from the producer, the art director? I mean, how do you start?
Well, they send me the script, and I read the script, and they tell me which locations they want to film in Washington rather than in Los Angeles. And they give
Toronto
or Toronto or yes.
Vancouver. Yeah, right.
We go through that list, I and the production designer. And the designer and I decide what type of look he needs for that scene. And then I literally go out and drive around a lot to find it. And I will put many, many miles on the car just looking. And then I'll take photos. I email those photos back to the designer. He looks through them, or she, and decides which ones they like. Then they show them to the director, and then the two of them choose together. Then the designer comes and looks at them personally, and then the director comes and he looks at them personally, and he decides.
So that's a long process.
It is a long process.
Now, do you have to worry about things like time of day and what the location looks like at a certain, for a certain feeling in the film?
Oh, definitely. If the script calls for day, you look at it during the day, and if it calls for night, you do have to look at it at night as well, which is kind of funny because photos don't really show it very well. So I always have to photograph it during the day also, so they can actually see what it really looks like. And then I go back and I photograph it at night as well. And they can see how dark it is, and then they come and light it, and because it doesn't look the way it's going to look in the movie because they put movie lights on it,
absolutely.
So it's all lit up.
It sounds like there's a fair amount of creative thinking that has to go into interpreting what the script or what the director asks for.
That's very true. I do get to put a little creativity into it sometimes. I do. Like, if it's not an absolute established position, place, which a lot of our feature films done in DC are the monuments. So I don't get to have any creativity there. They are what they are. And but then if it's a restaurant or a home, I will go and look at something I think works. And I definitely try to find something that will definitely work in the movie. So I do get to use my creative eye, my photographic eye some, and that's the most fun of my job,
You must have a photographic memory, too, as you drive around thinking, oh, that's a good spot. I'll file that one for future reference.
I do try that. I have a long list.
Yeah, I imagine.
I have a long list.
How did you go about creating your career as a location manager? I mean, is there a shingle you hang out on your door and say, locations here, or how do you start this?
Well, it's the same way you get into feature films in almost any position. You become a production assistant. And so I was a production assistant, which is the entry-level position, and they're gophers. You know what that means. They go for coffee. They go for Xeroxing. And for years I did that, and I did a lot of different departments. And then I chose locations, and I became an assistant in the locations department. So I was an assistant location manager for years.
Oh, okay.
So it's like an apprenticeship is what it's like, and almost every position in the movie business is that way.
Now, IMDb tells us that you also appeared in at least one film. Do you want to say a word or two about that?
Okay. I actually started out trying to be an actress many years ago, and quickly found there was no work in that field. And yes, I was in broadcast news, and I was also in a TV movie, Kennedy, with Martin Sheen.
Oh, yes. Right.
I asked him a question. I was a reporter. And in broadcast news, though, it was kind of funny. I was also the assistant location manager on the movie.
Wow.
But they all knew I was trying to get acting jobs. Would you like to hear this whole story?
Yes. Can you tell it in a minute?
Okay, I'll try.
Yeah.
And one day they forgot to cast a part, and they called me across town and said, "Do you still want to be in the movie?" I said, "Yeah." And they had me read the line on the telephone to the director.
That's an audition.
And he went, "Okay, you got it." So I had to drive all the way across town really fast and do the part. And it's very funny because you can't really see me, and it's not my voice, but I still get residual checks.
Fantastic. That's great. I know that some of our students have some questions for you. And so I'd like to turn to the audience now and see if we have somebody with a question. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Cameron Branke. There are a lot of seeing places in DC. How do you keep track of all them?
Well, various ways. Actually, if it's just a generic location in the script, I literally go and drive around and look. So I don't really have a list of restaurants or offices or homes. I actually go look. I physically go and drive around and knock on doors, which is the hardest part of my job, is cold knocking on a door and saying, "Would you like to have a movie in your home?" And they all mostly go, "No." So, but otherwise, I do keep lists over the years, and I accumulate locations and people's names and numbers, and I go back to those names and numbers on each job. And if people have moved on, I'd have to just start all over again, and that's part of the job too. So,
great. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Smita. What is the best career path to becoming a location manager?
Can you go to school for it?
You can go to production. Actually, doing production, film production at a university is not a bad way to start, because it's very helpful to know a lot of aspects of the filming industry for the job, because the location cannot just look right. It also has to be logistically possible. So you have to know what the logistics are. Like an office that is noisy, and the noise cannot be shut off, like if it was open, if it was in a lobby or something like that, that office will not work because it's too loud. So you literally go and look for an office that has the right look but is also quiet. So starting at a university is good. And then becoming a production assistant is the next step. And that's the trickiest part of getting into the film business, actually, is because there are various aspects to doing that. First of all, there are many other people who want that job. And secondly, you have to be able to be available because you're doing freelance work and it's sporadic. You have to be able to be available on a moment's notice. So that's a little tricky to also pay the rent.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, my name's Diana, and my question is, how much is there a demand for a location manager in this area?
Well, it's not huge, frankly, to be honest. There are 5 of us in the DC metro area, and there's 2 or 3 more in Baltimore. And it takes a long, long time for the people coming up to get enough experience to go on to become a feature film location manager. They have to be an assistant for many, many, many years because there's not enough work. And those assistants have a difficult time maintaining enough work to pay the rent over those years that are needed. So there's not a huge demand, to tell you the truth, in this area because there aren't enough features, and the TV shows are sporadic, and smaller productions don't use location managers. The producers do it.
Do you yourself have an assistant?
Yes, I have a couple. There are about 4 people who assist all the time right now, and they change over the years because they go on to other work, more full-time work usually.
Have you ever sent anyone out into the world as a location manager in their own right?
Well, I've lost them
Yeah,
to Los
sure.
Angeles. Yes, I've lost quite a few to Los Angeles. That's what usually happens
Yeah.
is the assistants either move to LA or New York.
Well, we know that you've done, some 20 films or something in the Washington area, and we have some clips that we'd like to show and talk about, just to kind of get your take on how you secured the location or if there's anything interesting that happened there.
Okay.
And there are some notable Washington scenes. And the first one we're going to show is Forrest Gump, a very, very famous clip of Forrest Gump at the Lincoln Memorial in the reflecting pool there. And let's roll that clip, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
That's all I have to say about that.
That's the right on, man. You said it all. What's your name, man?
My name is Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump!
Jenny! It was the happiest moment of my life.
Now that is a classic scene, a classic shot, and it has a number of stars in it, but the star is really the location, I would say. Tell us how you secured that and what some of the challenges were in working at that site.
Well, we filmed there a lot. That's right at the Lincoln Memorial. They call that the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool because it's down near the reflecting pool. So that's the National Park Service, which is infamously difficult to work with because they have a lot of rules because their actual job is to safeguard the memorials. They are not really a movie set. So you have to work within their rules, and a lot of the rules at that time were against some of those things we wanted to do. So we just had to work with them each step of the way. I had to ask permission for them to get in that water about 5 times before they would actually let us do it.
To your knowledge, are there other movies that have, before Forrest Gump, that used the pool in that way with splashing around in it?
No one has ever done that before or since.
Wow.
And no one will ever do it, because right after we filmed that, the Park Service put a new rule in place that no one would ever be allowed in the water again. So, yay, we got it.
How did you convince them to let you do it for that movie?
One thing we had to do was swear on a stack of Bibles that we would not damage the water, the pool, in any way. It's actually rather delicate because it's old, and it is crumbling basically. So we could not put any equipment in the water whatsoever, nothing, not a light pole, not a stand of any kind, not a net, anything. So that was the biggest challenge, actually, was how to film it from the sideline. And the director, Zemeckis, very, very great director, incredibly smart man, just worked it with his cinematographer until they were able to film it from the side and the end. And so that was a huge caveat. But a funny story that we did was that the pool is a home to many waterfowl.
Indeed.
And we swept the pool, that end of the pool, for 4 days straight in a row before we filmed it.
Yeah, so it was a little cleaner than it
Yes.
normally is, right? Yeah.
And that was a production assistant job.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh my! And just one more question on the Forrest Gump shot, because it's so impressive. The number of people. It looks like you have the entire population of a small town out there around the pool. How is that managed?
Well, at that time, the way they would do those special effects shots was with a motion control camera, and it took 2 days to do that, and it was the same 2,000 people that they would put right in front of the stage and film the scene, and then they would move them over here and move them over there and move them like that, and they moved them around the edges of the pool just about a quarter of the way down. And so it is real people about a quarter of the way, and then the rest of them are all CGI after that.
And those are the same people, but captured electronically.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we have another clip from a whole different kind of film called Deep Impact, which is the meteor story. And for this one, you had to find a road to create the world's worst traffic jam.
Yes.
So let's take a look at that clip. Now, of course, some people would say that looks like daily life in Northern Virginia. But how in heaven's name did you arrange for that many cars on that stretch of road? And tell us that story.
That was a huge challenge. And when I first received that job, that was one of the first things they said to me. Not only do you have these other scenes to do, you must find this road for this traffic jam. Has to be a 4-lane highway divided, and it has to look like it's leaving DC, and it has to be able to be closed for 2 days. So I started searching, and this time, instead of driving around, I actually went through the official channels of calling the Virginia Film Office, who hooked me up with the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And they actually had some new roads. And I also called the Greenway, the road between
the
Dulles
toll road,
Airport
right.
and Leesburg, because it was brand new at that time. And I knew it was privately owned. And I actually ended up having a choice for the director, because the Greenway said yes. And this road, which is Route 234 in Manassas, was brand new, but only part of it was finished. And at either end of it, there was a road crossing it, and then there was another stretch of it to be finished. And this piece was completely finished about 1 week before we used it.
Yeah, fantastic.
It was perfect timing.
And then how did you manage all the traffic? The thousands, it looks like thousands of cars.
It
was it in fact?
was thousands of
Yeah.
cars. They were placed, first they came to a school, they auditioned. And they auditioned by bringing their cars filled with luggage.
Okay.
And the best ones with the most luggage won.
That's great. Oh,
And
fantastic.
and we also we knew it was going to be broiling hot also, so we put refrigerator trucks amongst them, and some of that worked a little bit, and some campers with coolers in them. I mean, you know, air conditioners that could run their air conditioner a little bit, but we still lost about 20 people that day.
When you say lost.
Oh, sorry, to heat exhaustion.
Yes, that's good.
And we designed the traffic jam so that the ambulances could go down the sides of it to retrieve the people who weren't feeling very well, because we knew we were going to have people too hot out there because it was really hot.
Things that the theater audience doesn't think about.
Yeah.
We have one more brief clip, and it's from, actually we returned to the Lincoln Memorial for this. It's from Wedding Crashers. Let's take a look at that.
Bet that blonde was a real shot of life.
Yeah, real shot. You ever think we're being, I don't want to say sleazy, because that's not the right word, but a little irresponsible? I mean,
No. One day you'll look back on all this and laugh. Say we were young and stupid. Couple of dumb kids running around.
we're not that young.
Hell of a season, pal.
Hell of a season.
Well, another beautiful shot, that same beautiful location, but in a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
I can't help but observe that those guys are breaking a lot of rules there, a lot of Park Service rules.
Yes, they are.
So, how did that work?
Well, the Park Service only allowed them to be drinking alcohol in that scene by having a policeman in the scene too. So they added a policeman at the end of the scene who comes over and says, "Hey, buddy, you can't do that here," and they cut him out.
Yeah, he didn't make the shot for some reason.
They cut him out.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, again, and the fact that there's a beautiful rowing team coming by right at the end.
Oh, yes.
Happenstance or planned?
I think that was happenstance on that shot, but we do hire those guys often. We do. We go around to the boathouses and find them, but that day I think it just happened to be perfect.
So I think the location managers must poke their noses into every aspect of human life.
We do. We do.
To make a film possible.
We do.
Well, let's turn back to the studio audience here and see if we have some more questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Yimeng. I was just wondering, what is the most difficult part of being a location manager?
Well, the most difficult part is handling all the millions of details. Each location has its own set of details. For instance, if you film in someone's home, we take all the furniture out of the house. So we have to store that furniture somewhere safe. And if they have a dog, we have to put it up in a kennel. And then we have to find a hotel room for them. And we have to make sure they can get to school and work. And we have all that to do along with the normal parts of location managing, which is parking and logistics and access to things. So I'd say second to knocking on the doors cold, asking if they can be in the movie, it would be the details, the millions of details.
Great. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Nat. If I want to find a location in Washington, D.C., where's a good place to start?
Well, it really depends on what it is. Let's see, let's give you a hard one. Where would you try to find an office?
Right here at George Mason.
That's a good answer, actually. If you start with someone you know. That's exactly right. And that's the best way to find a place. You start with someone you know. If your father works in a beautiful office, you call your dad and see if his office can do it. If you know someone in the real estate business, you call them. Sometimes I'll call those rent-a-offices places. What you have to do is really think of as many things as you can to find it, but then you have to pursue every one of those thoughts you have, and you have to pursue them to the nth degree. And that's the hard part of the job. You really have to be self-motivated to go all the way to the end to find it, and then even further to get the full permission to film there.
How much does budget enter into your calculations? Because I'm sure the films have to compensate either whether it's a government agency or whether it's a private homeowner or owner of an office building.
Yes.
Are you responsible for that negotiation? Or
Yes, I negotiate those location fees, yes, and it does matter. So we do talk about that first with the production manager of the movie. But most of the movies that come here are large budget movies, frankly, because it's expensive to film here. It's always expensive to film away from home. And then DC has some additional expenses that they have to budget for too. So that's why most of the movies that you see coming out of here are big budget movies, frankly.
And yet DC has some irreplaceable venues and pictures and sites that you can't really find anywhere else.
No, you can't. So sometimes we end up filming them second unit, and they will go back and do the rest of it CGI, like Legally Blonde 2.
Yes.
They walk into the chamber of the Lincoln Memorial. But what we did there was we took digital stills of the interior of that chamber, and then they built 4 columns, just a piece of the columns about this high, and the camera could roll behind the column, but the characters are on stage.
That is remarkable. So has CGI made a big difference in the location manager's life?
It certainly has.
For better or for worse? Or?
It's getting dicey sometimes for me. Sometimes, like that movie, I did not end up working on that movie very much because they did it CGI. But on bigger budget movies, they come to film because you can tell.
Yes.
And they do care about that.
And the location often is the star of the show.
Right.
Well, Peggy Pridemore, this has been a real pleasure having you in Studio A today.
Thank
you so much.
I had a great time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. This has been Studio A. Thanks for watching.